Hello, and welcome to the Creative Academy, your online source offering accountability, coaching, and a writing community. I'm Eileen Cook, and today we'll be chatting with Barbara Poelle about being a literary agent. Now, Barbara Poelle began her publishing career as a freelance copywriter and editor before joining the Goodman Agency in 2007, but feels she truly prepared for the industry during her brief stint as a stand-up comic in the Los Angeles area. She's found success in placing thrillers, literary suspense, young adult, and upmarket fiction, and is actively seeking their next great client in those genres. She's passionate about anything with a unique voice. Barbara also writes the column Funny You Should Ask in Writer's Digest. Now, Barbara is a part of the Irene Goodman Agency. That agency began in 1978, and since then it has been grown into a thriving international business with 6 senior agents, 2 junior agents, 2 foreign affiliations, with movie rights and agents in LA as well. They represent authors at every level, from multi-number 1 New York Times bestsellers to talented newcomers. And their foreign agents are simply the best in the business, and they've placed their books in over 25 territories, many of them at auction. Now, free a piece of advice is I may not be completely unbiased, as the delightful Barbara is my agent. So we'll be talking with her, and let's waste no more time and get started. Hello and welcome to the Creative Academy. I'm Eileen Cook, and I have with me Barbara Poelle from the Irene Goodman Agency. She is my agent, an agent extraordinaire, and she has agreed to come here today to talk about sort of all things agenting. So we had people send us in questions.
Oh, good.
But first I have probably the most important question. To verify, true or false, I am in fact your favorite client.
True. I mean, you didn't have to finish that sentence.
Okay. I know, I feel better. I hope everyone
You're
else
my
does.
only client. Didn't I ever tell you? I got rid of everybody else.
Oh, thank you. That's okay. I feel now we have time. I feel good about that. All right. So most people have a basic idea of what an agent does, that your job is sort of
Drinking and talking. Yeah.
Drinking, talking, crushing the hopes and dreams of your writers.
Yeah, drinking the blood of lesser men. Yes.
Yes. But like, how do you spend a typical day? Like, what do you do?
Sure. What do I do? It's a grab bag, really. It's a variety of different things. I spend the working hours, like what you'd call banker's hours. I spend those kind of responding to fires on email, figuring out schedules, facilitating conversations between editors and my clients. Probably, within a given day, I'll get 150 to 200 emails just in the banker's hours of just like, because I have 50 clients. I mean, I got rid of all of them but yesterday I had 50. And so if you think if I have to dedicate an hour to each of those clients a week, that's a 40-hour work week. So usually the work week itself is about troubleshooting and responding to in-time issues. Whereas my off hours are in the nights and on the weekends, I'm reading manuscripts, whether they're current client manuscripts or something I've requested from the slush or from a conference, etc. So it's really a 24-hour job, and some people think I work all the time, but I just think, or else I'm on vacation all the time, because you can kind of fit in how you want to work when you want to work. But the normal office hours are for office troubleshooting, and I do all my reading after hours.
That's a lot of reading after hours.
Mm-hmm. But it's my superpower. So I can read, I'll probably read 300 to 400 books a year. And I can probably read a full novel within, I'll be like, I'm starting now. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, hey, here's my notes. So it's just a weird thing that all the women in my family read wicked fast. It's not being able to fly or invisibility, but it's something.
It was like your destiny to do this job.
It's totally my destiny. I love my own opinion and I love to read. Agent.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So writers hate queries, like we hate them with a white hot passion. Mm-hmm. So is there any suggestions that makes a query kind of stand out? Or is there any warnings like, please, for all that's good and holy, don't do this thing?
Sure. Many years ago, someone said this, and I don't remember who it was, so I have since taken it as my own and refused to give credit for it, which was, a query is just simply the hook, the book, and the cook. So the first line of your query is the title of your book, maybe some comp titles, the word count, the genre it's in. The second part of your query is a 5-line premise, not plot, of your book. And then the final paragraph is the cook, which is you. It could be a bio. It could be, I wrote this out longhand while watching my child play softball on the weekends. It could be, I have an MFA and it's previously been published. It doesn't matter. just a bit about you. So basically we're looking at a single page hook, book, and cook, and then get out of there. And sometimes I'll just read the hook and I'll skip over all the other stuff and jump right into the pages themselves. Because if there's something I see in there as far as a genre I represent or something that intrigues me in that opening comp title comparison, then I will just go right to the pages and then come back later and read the premise and your bio.
You talked about premise versus plot. How do you define those two things being different?
Remember when we were kids and the TV guide would have like a couple of lines of something?
Back when there was a TV guide?
Right. I just aged myself. I mean, I was told there was a TV guide back in the day. It's a premise versus the plot. You know, great white shark terrorizes small New England town over 4th of July weekend is a premise. Saying something like, Sheriff Brody has to contend with 4th of July weekend and the attacks of a great white shark. So he finds Quinn to, but like the whole, like the people and the details and the beats, we don't need to know. We just need to know premise.
Okay. Now, do you think that's just you, or do you think that's agents in general? Because you're special, let's be honest.
I'm super special, but I can't speak for everybody, but for me, the only time I really care too much if it's been plotted, not premised, is if I think, I think now I know why your manuscript is 140,000 words, because you can't help but say things as much, you can't use as many words as possible. So sometimes the query can be a little clue if your manuscript is very long and your premise section or plot section is also very long and getting really into information I don't maybe need, then it's kind of a little clue. But again, if there's something going on in that initial hook, I will probably jump to the pages and just check it out. And I can tell fairly quickly if something is a no, much more than I can tell if it's a yes.
Fair enough. Is there anything that would make you like run away from a query?
Yeah, sure. Like in the past, I've gotten a query that opened, stop looking at your cute intern's butt and read this. And I was like, oh, everything about that just grosses me out.
Ew.
And I got one that started off, what if it was your job to kill babies? And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna do this. I actually, personally, I don't like the questions like, what would you do if a blah, blah, blah? Because I'm like, I don't know, what would your character, like, it just doesn't work for me. And some agents like that a lot. They like the, what would happen if, what if kind of opening. Nope, not me. So just give me, this is my, this is my title, this is my word count, these are the comp titles, this is the genre. And if you want to say why you picked me, that's fine. It's not going to make or break it. But if you said, I read with Malice and I thought I would fit, her tone and approach, I thought I would fit in well with that. Great. I like that a lot because my taste is subjective. But if I liked you and they think that I might also like them because of you, that's kind of a nice little throughway in. But make sure you have read with Malice, because there's a really interesting device used in with Malice that I will know if you haven't read it and you're trying to say.
There will be a quiz later.
There will be a quiz. Mm-hmm.
There will be an essay quiz. Now, when you request a manuscript, do you read the whole thing or do you stop?
Usually I will stop. Well, I mean, okay, so probably out of 100 queries, I might request 10 manuscripts. And out of those 10 manuscripts, I may sign one person, if that. So, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of manuscripts I'm going through to be able to get a client list. But I can tell when something becomes a no, it's a no. And I can just put it down. If something's a maybe, it's a little bit harder. And sometimes I'll read through to the end to see if anything surprised me or redeemed itself, and then I'll know how to give revisions. But if all of a sudden I'm like struggling to find a way to make this manuscript work, then it's not for me. I don't have the bandwidth. That is not to say you won't sell your book or find an agent, because there are agents that are newer to our agency or agencies in general that have more bandwidth. They have a great skill set there, but they have more bandwidth. I have 50 clients and I can't be doing, 3 or 4 rounds of revisions. Whereas one of like our colleague, Whitney Ross, she was working at Tor for years and years, and then she came over to be an agent. So she has the editorial eye and the bandwidth. So when I see something, I've referred 2 people to her recently where I was like, there's some chops here, but I don't have the bandwidth to dig in right now. And so I refer them over to her.
And that's something I've actually talked about before on the Academy, like idea between like established agent versus new agent. Mm-hmm. And I have talked to people about like established has a whole lot of benefits. Mm-hmm. but new has some as well. But my big advice, and I don't know if you have any others, is if someone is looking at a new agent, that they're in an established agency.
Absolutely.
So they have some
Absolutely.
wisdom behind them, I guess.
And I mean, somebody was my first client, and and somebody will be everyone's first client, but I had the power of the Goodman name behind me, and I had the power of Irene behind me. And she was never on the calls with my prospective clients when I was signing them, but I did say, this agency has I think it's a 40-year legacy. This agency has a 30-year legacy. Here's the names that we've broken out, and here's why, and I have the full support of the team behind me. And that's what any newer agent in an established agency will have. And always, 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 I don't care if they just started agenting yesterday or they've been agenting for 25 years. If an agent offers you representation, ask to speak to one of their current clients. And you're going to ask them 2 questions. You can ask them all the other questions you want. You ask that client 2 questions. What do you like best about working with her? And what do you wish she could improve on or he could improve on? And you'll get a little intel there.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking, what would I improve on with you?
Mm-hmm.
I would make you live closer to me so we could.
I know, so you go out for drinks. I know, because I'm damn near perfect. So I feel like,
I know.
I think what some of my clients would say these days speaks directly to what I was saying is I used to be able to get back with a full read in like 72 hours, but now it takes anywhere from, 10 to 14 days for me to get back to a client manuscript, just because it is that cycle constantly going. So that is one thing that I know everyone like rocks back and forth is on pins and needles while I'm reading their manuscript, and I'm getting to it as fast as I can. But I also have small humans and a spouse, and I feel like all of them sometimes need an hour of my attention, but then I'll go back and pay attention to the client.
Well, and I think that's a really important thing that, again, I've talked about people when they're talking to agents, is that the big thing is communication. So for me, it's asking that question, like, here's my manuscript. When do you think you'll get back to it? Because if you tell me it's going to be a month, I can't read it. I've got this conference. I've got this other stuff. Like, I'm actually, at least me, like, I'm okay with that, because I can kind of be like, okay, I'm not going to hear until end of June. For me, it's when I don't know, because then I have a great imagination, which I think we've established. And so I fill that in with, you've read it and you think it's a pile of shit, and you're trying to figure out how to tell me it's that. Although I think I would know by now, you would just tell me that. But for some reason, I think that for me is the biggest thing. And so, with an agent, having communication around expectations is huge.
And asking the agent, how do you communicate? Like, this is just between me and you, right? But like, you have my cell phone. You could text me on Saturday at 2 and be like, hey, did you see the blah, blah, blah? And I'll respond to it. I'm very much like, again, I feel like I work all the time, or I'm actually on vacation all the time. So it's like all one thing. And there's many agents I know that will say, my clients email me and ask for a time slot to talk to them. And that's how I prefer to run my business. Like, I get texts all the time from my clients just asking a quick question. I can answer it, it's fine.
And I'm going to text you and be something like, so what'd you think of the royal wedding? That's going to be my text.
I know, right? That's what I mean too. And it can be that too. And one of my clients just texted a picture of his daughter at her first formal. And he's like, I'm so proud of her. So I'm like, lovely. It doesn't, to me, it's all one, right? It's just my privilege and my pleasure to facilitate art and the artists who make it. And so it's just fun. I don't sign anyone that I think is going to be a big drag. So
no, that's bad. Mm-hmm. How do you pitch an editor? Like, how do you go about, like, so let's imagine, like, well, we don't have to imagine. I was going to say, let's imagine that we work together. All right. Use your imagination, Barbara. Like, when you have a manuscript, like, we'll go with something like with Malice, which we actually took out to different places. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you decide where you're going to send something?
Well, it's very different from when I was first starting to now. Like, now I call people and I hiss, check your inbox, you're welcome, click. And like, they're, because I have a reputation and they know that and also there are people, I have repeat business with people. I've sold several books to, for example, your editor, I had sold her previous books. So I know that we have similar taste and that we have similar aesthetic on what we're looking for. So when you're a more established agent, you kind of develop those relationships. But the way that I develop those relationships is by, complete shotgun approach, just like me schmoozing, lunches, meetings, talking, learning about people, trying people, sending a manuscript here that then, okay, that was a big rejection because she doesn't like blah, blah, blah. Going over here, oh, he really likes this type of prose. Okay. So you just start acquiring information about editors. But for me, I have a lot of passion. I run on 99% passion and 1% intellect. So I like to talk.
Tiny bit of bourbon.
I like to talk. I like to talk to people so they can hear me, and for With Malice, it was such a unique, it was the perfect time to pitch it because it was such a little zeitgeisty moment. And the auction that happened was everyone was in that same moment. Like they were all comparing it to the same kind of zeitgeisty experience of, cereal or of, the Foxy Noxy kind of thing. I'm being so careful not to ruin anything for people who haven't read it. And which should be nobody. Everyone should have read it. But so it was kind of the perfect storm of this is what everyone's looking for, and also really hooks into the zeitgeist. And it was a massive auction, which are my favorite, not necessarily author's favorite. They can be very nerve-wracking, but
I was pretty fond of it, speaking for myself.
Actually, it was fine.
I was good with it. Yeah, no.
But having something that you just have that feeling this is going to be something, and then finding the people in my mind that I think will have the same kind of feeling I did about it. But I'll try new people all the time. In fact, I just tried a newer editor over at Berkeley with something I gave her a 48-hour exclusive, and she came and preempted it for 6 figures. Because again, like when I was a baby agent, as a baby editor, she had the full force of the house behind her saying, this is a good book, go for it. So she had all the support she needed to go for it. And that book is called My Lovely Wife. It's Hot Market Suspense. And the editor was Jen Monroe. And she is over at Berkeley.
Woo-hoo. And some author is a very excited author.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is kind of maybe a related question. Like, what are you looking for in a client? Like, how do you know if, like, you've read the manuscript, they have the writing chops. Like, when you get us on the phone, like, how do you know if there's someone who's going to do well in this business? Or is that something you even worry about?
I don't care. Like, if I have some clients that have, like severe social anxiety who are very flat affect voice, because when I'm talking to them, they're crazy nervous, and then their emails are hilarious. And then
You're talking about me right now, aren't you?
No, your emails are always hilarious, and we always have great conversations. But there's nothing off-putting about, if I call you and want to represent your work, you're still an A+ unless you show me differently. So there's nothing off-putting. I do know that some other agents do kind of a deep dive on social media to make sure that nothing's been said or no, and maybe that's something I should be considering. But for me, I just take the initial work at merit. Authenticity is important, especially if you're writing about marginalized characters. And if you hooked me in on it, and I believe in the authenticity, the conversation surrounding that when I call you will kind of take care of any concerns I may have. But no, if I love the book, I'm coming at you like an octopus falling out of a redwood. So it's not really going to make a difference on who you are or what. I'm not really looking for anything in a client except you need to write real good.
And what do you do if a client, like, book 1 is awesome, but then you can tell book 2, like, they're really struggling, like, how do you know, like, your role between sort of supporting a writer versus maybe, like, have you ever had to end a relationship with a client, and how did you know, like, it's time for us to part ways?
Yeah, it all depends. If it's a 2-book contract and the second book is a little lackluster, I step back. I just fade back like Nosferatu, because that's a conversation between the client and the editor. If a single book happened, it published well, and we can't seem to sell the second book, I'll just tell them to write a 3rd, and I'll read that. And if I don't care for that, I'll tell them to write a 4th, and I'll read that. And if I don't care for that, that's probably when I'll say, hey, do you think this is me? Maybe it's me. And have a client conversation with them, because while I prefer to think my opinion is the only one that matters, there might be something that I am missing in your work. Yeah. I've had, I've been fired by clients for being like, I'm not going to go out with this manuscript. This is not anything I'm interested in, after having represented their first couple of manuscripts, which is fine. By all means, go. I don't have any problem with that. But as far as signing a client and not being able to sell the first manuscript I go out with, I will have them write a 2nd book, 3rd book, 4th book. We'll keep going. Michelle Gable's the perfect example of that. A Paris Apartment was her 5th book. I couldn't sell the previous 4. Paris Apartment, hundreds of thousands of copies sold, New York Times bestseller. But I believed that every book I had gone out with previously was going to be that. I don't take it lightly. So every book I went out with, I had a great deal of passion for. That just happened to be the one that resonated in the market at that moment and did gangbusters.
It is such a subjective business. Like,
totally. Mm-hmm.
That's the part that drives me crazy, but
Yeah.
that it's not about me right now. So, okay.
That's weird.
I know. Usually it should be. So one of my favorite questions was someone was talking about career planning. And, is that something that you see as part of your job with your authors?
Yes.
And like, how do you do that?
Sure. So when I call you to say, I love you, I think you're a genius, I just want to have all of your book babies. Did I go too far? Then I say, what are you writing next? What are you working on next? Because I don't sign a book, I sign a career. And if the person says, well, it takes me 18 months to write a book or 2 years to write a book, fine. Person says, well, I wrote, I think I'd like to do this, but then I'd like to get into some poetry. I'll say, I'm not sure that I'm your best person for poetry. Let's talk about that. If they say, I want to do this and I also want to write YA, yeah, I can do both of those, but we're only going to do one book at a time. But to me, I just get the ground rules of what they want to write next and what they enjoy writing. But I always ask several questions throughout that initial conversation to establish the fact that we're in this for the long run and they better have more than one idea under the bed. And I have yet to, is this true? Yeah. I have yet to call someone to offer representation and then rescind it. Like, okay, I don't offer representation usually till the end of the call. I say, I get all my questions, but I have never called someone with the intention to sign them and then been like, this person's gonzo, and not sign them. All right. So, yeah.
If you see something, for example, like, are you looking at our work and being like, you're funny. You should be writing a funny book. Or are you letting the author kind of direct that in terms of, if I came to you and I said, screw it, I want to move into science fiction. Like, is that something you're weighing in on around like, Eileen, I've never, seen you write science fiction before. What? Tell me more about this. Or are you guiding? Like, I guess that's kind of the question the person said. Do you feel it's your job to kind of provide some of that guidance and direction? Or is it a case of sort of helping me when I'm like trailblazing in a particular area?
If someone says, I have an idea for a science fiction novel, I'll be like, prove it. Because I'm not going to go with anything of yours that does less than what your previous works have done. So it better hook me in. I have an author right now. She's a very well-established YA author, very, very well-established. And she said, I want to write an adult novel in the suspense genre. I was like, okay, prove it. She sent it to me. I read it. I was like, oh, yep, you can do this. So I'm going out with it right now. So, but I was going in there almost harder on her than I would have been if she would have come through the slush, because I was like, you need to prove to me that you can handle this new genre. It's a totally different genre. You can't really turn me off of a new genre or a new subject matter unless it's something so far out of my realm that I wouldn't benefit you by being a representative. Like I said, like poetry books, or I don't do well, I guess I don't really do I don't do baby killer books. Oh, I don't do Rapey McRapertons from Rape Mountain. I don't do any like on the page rapey stuff. But what's it? Oh, erotica. I couldn't even think of the name for it. I don't do stuff like that.
I'm so far from it. I don't even know what it's called.
It's a very, very robust market, but I don't read in it and I don't represent it, so I don't know what the palette is right now. I don't know what's hot in it right now. But yeah.
Would you point someone, like, would you say, have you ever thought about writing YA? Or have you thought about doing?
Yeah. Well, like I'm saying to you, I think you're so funny. And your books aren't known for their wacky humor, and to me, I just feel like even when you do your live presentations in your classes, just standing room only, the audience is roaring when you're teaching. And I just feel like there's that's why I keep pushing you to write your super secret project, because I think there's so much humor to be had in there. And dark humor is my favorite humor. But to me, that's the only time I would say, have you ever thought, and I've also said to people who are writing an adult, but all of a sudden they have a young protagonist in their book, and I say, I'm writing YA because I recognize something. But it's never about the person themselves. I'm never like, oh, you should write about some Canadian person. Like, it's never about that.
But in general, you should write about Canadian people, I think.
Well, as long as it's about Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah. Dreamy. Big Dreamyson.
So, yeah, I don't, it would have to be a benchmark that I see, unless the client approaches me and says, I want to try this, then I would say, prove it. Send me 3 chapters or a whole book or whatever you want to do, but prove it.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. What do you like best about being an agent?
All of it. Every second, every minute. I put my feet on the ground in the morning and I think, yep, like everything about it is me. My whole life has been a crash course in being good at this job.
Nice. And the next, the lightning round here, I guess, is people wanted to know, what advice would you give a writer who is maybe just starting out, like they're just starting the query process, And is there advice you would give to someone who's maybe a mid-career author who's, you know, had some book success, but maybe not as much as they wanted? So
it's the same advice. It's the same advice.
That's cheating kind of, but okay.
Yeah. Who's your writing group? Who are your critique partners? You should be the person in the room that thinks, oh boy, everybody here is better than me. That should be your critique group and your writing partners. Whether you're brand new starting out or whether you're established, you should quietly be seething with envy about some other people who you think are better writers than you, because constantly chasing the challenge will make you better and sharper as an author. I would also say, you know, have a sense of humor, because it's not all six-figure deals and auctions. It can be a gut-wrenching canoe of terror as well. So
that's my next book title.
Oh shoot, I said the title, Canoe of Terror.
Canoe of Terror. So much my super secret project, Barbara.
That's a laugh out loud ride.
Yeah.
But no, you got to go in with a sense of humor, and that's a lot of times too what I most like about this job is the people. Like I say, you know, I facilitate art for a living. It's the dream job, but the artists are my favorite part about it.
So I have told some people, like when I talk about when you and I started our relationship, is I had queried, I had been represented before. My previous agent had left the business. I was looking for a new agent. I had queried, I think, a total of 6 agents. And 3 of them, you know, got back to me and were like, yeah, let's talk and those kinds of things. Another one got back and was kind of like, nah, I'm just not sure we're a good fit. So it was like, I don't need half-assy. So that was the end of that. But 2 people were like, I love your writing. You're brilliant. You're all this. And I got you on the phone and you were like, I love your writing, but I totally think you're the smart kid in the room who's not working as hard as you should. Uh-huh. And I was listening to you and I'm like, And I got off the phone and I was like, bitch, like, do you know how long I've been working at this? Like, what do you mean I'm not working? And I talked about that on and on and on, like, and suddenly I realized it bothered me because you were right.
Yeah. I mean, I read your previous books and I was like, oh, I see what you're doing, you know? And to me, that's why I was like, you're going to work and you're going to work hard. And it
pushed me.
It paid off.
It did.
In a big way. But I also think that I'm never going to lie on the phone. If I think your book needs work, it needs work. If I think we're not the right match, we're not the right match. If I think, you know, for a variety of nuances that you might have questions about in your career as a writer, I will be brutally honest. I know sometimes that I make my clients cry, and it doesn't matter their gender, after a conversation, but I don't do it out of anything other than the pure and unadulterated desire to make you be the best you can be in this environment.
Well, and I would rather, I mean, don't feel like you know, it's not like a challenge or anything. I would rather that you made me cry.
Challenge accepted.
Mic drop. And push me then, or to be honest with me. Like if something's not working, I think most of us, as hard as it is, we do want up the praise. And, you know, I talk sometimes with writers around, be clear about what you're asking for. Like if you're at a stage where you're like a baby writer and it hurts too much, you can just say to someone, I just need to know it's working well.
Yep. Yes. Yep, I have some authors that don't want to see the past letters from editors. They say, just tell me when we have interest. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm here to do that too. And here's what I always say too when I am signing a client. I say, I have 2 specific goals here: to sell your books and to make you happy. And the order of those 2 things will never change. So sometimes there's going to be times when what I'm saying doesn't make you happy, but it's going to sell your books.
And I think most of us, most of us that really want, you know, to be in this for a long time, that's what we know we need it. We know we need that tough love, right?
Yeah. And remember, I've never written a novel before. I've never sat down and put my ass in a chair and done, 85,000 words.
That's right. You don't know our pain, Barbara.
I don't know your pain. However, what I will say is that for how many times you've been rejected, I mean, multiply that times hundreds of clients over 11 years. And I've been hit with the no thank you stick more than any of you can be. And it's to me, it is a direct line to my heart and head too, because I love this book. What is wrong with you? You should love it too. Like, what is broken inside of you, sir? So for me, it is, I take it very personally. My rise and fall is also on the tide of my author's joy and defeat. So to me, I definitely feel all the way through. And I have a column in a magazine, and sometimes when the editor's like, this isn't as funny as it could be, I just like turn 8 shades of fury. So I have a little taste of what it's like when I'm like, I don't like the middle third, just pull that out. But as far as what it takes to write a full novel, I'm in constant awe of my clients and what they're able to churn out is just beauty, book after book.
I'm liking that. Is there any other advice, anything you would suggest to anybody? Anything about agenting, publishing, anything we should know?
No, I mean, again, authenticity is important. I think there's a lot of classes that say write what you know, but I think what that says to you is make sure that what you're putting on the page is as authentic as possible. Don't hold anything back. And if you're going to be writing about a community that is considered marginalized, just be sure that the representation within that novel is well researched, well sounded, and well approached. I do see a lot of books where that is not the case, and that can be frustrating and disheartening.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming and talking to us.
That's it?
That's it, baby.
That's so delightful. Thank you for having me.
Are you a member yet? Join us today and unlock a wealth of resources, masterclasses, feedback opportunities, and community events designed to help you reach the next step in your writing journey. No matter what stage you're at, we've got a helping hand to guide you along the way. Check out our free resource room if you'd like to get a taste of how we can help you reach your writing and publishing goals. Thanks for bringing us along on your writing and publishing journey. Donna, Crystal, and I hope we'll see you around the Creative Academy soon.